Right now, you're listening to the Azeem Digital Asks podcast, the podcast where I, Azeem, talk to some of the top marketers in the industry, find out everything about them, how they got to where they are today, and more importantly, sharing some really useful marketing tips that will help everybody listening to this become better marketers. Stay tuned for another great episode. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Azeem Digital Asks podcast. Super mega ultra fantastically excited about my guest today. Very good friend of mine. I'm absolutely going to steal his Twitter bio as an introduction and then give him a better one. He is PPC guy at ZATO Marketing, which I've probably pronounced wrong. Sorry. Looks after Microsoft and Google Ads. Mr. Shopping, as I call him. Lots of clients. He's a husband. He's a dad of 5. That is correct. 5 children. Absolutely raising his own soccer team. Loves coffee, but most importantly, he has recently authored a new book, which we are going to be talking loads about. And most importantly, from what I remember about him, he lives in this part of America where there's not many people and loads of bears. And he told me that if he ever goes walking, he's quite likely to probably be attacked by a bear. Ultimately, this is the guy, Kirk Williams. Kirk, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. Thankfully, there are no bears that I'm aware of in the immediate vicinity of my house, so I think I'm okay right now.
If you do get attacked, I think it would make for a great episode, but we should just
you
give you the number for
truly
your
go
locals.
viral. Yeah. And too bad it's not video as well then.
Oh, yeah. Maybe next year I can get you back on. Stay alive. Really pleased to have you on, buddy. We will dig into everything about you, everything about the book, and a couple of random questions in between. But always, we start with a random icebreaker. And I've picked this one specifically because I know you're a big Star Wars fan, so I was going down that sort of route. So first one, if aliens landed on Earth tomorrow and said to you, Kirk, we want to take you home, would you go with them, and why? Why not?
That is a good question, a great question. So I have a couple of thoughts. Let's see. First would be because you noted my family, which by the way, 5 and 1 on the way. So really working towards that soccer family.
Oh, congrats.
Yes, thank you. Because of my family, probably I would have to stay home. Make sure they're all taken care of. But let's say I had no family. I'd be interested. I'd have to learn a little bit more about them. I assume we'd be communicating since they were inviting me along. So I'd probably try to engage them in some conversation, ask them questions that would maybe be of a nature that would help me learn whether they have something nefarious planned. If I could trust them, because what they'll do to me when we get there is going to significantly impact whether or not I would go with them. Right. So I'd love to learn all that. But if it involved a awesome, peaceful world that we'd visit, and I had no family here, yes, I would. I would absolutely love to go visit an alien world. That'd be awesome.
Very solid answer there. Yeah, mine would just be, look, how soon can we go?
Yeah, especially in 2020, right? The amount of people in 2019 who would have said yes, we'll leave, and the amount of people in 2020 is probably increased quite a bit, I would imagine.
Anyway, let's move swiftly on. Love that answer. Because my introduction was like pretty bad, do you want to tell the audience a little bit more about yourself?
No, your introduction was awesome, but yeah. So let's see, you covered the book, covered Montana, covered those important things. I own ZATO, so just a small little agency. We focus specifically on Google and Microsoft ads, and really try to kill it for our clients. And in the meantime, have a great time enjoying our jobs and life while we're at it too. So that's kind of important to me is my own work and mental ability and ability to go home to my family and not be constantly on, and same thing for my employees as well. So we value that as well. Yeah, so then try to do some writing and speaking to keep myself sharp and knowing what's going on with the Google Ads world. So that's it. That's Kirk in a nutshell, I guess.
Awesome. PPC Kirk, or Pop Kirk, as I've recently seen on Twitter.
That was my failed attempt to be funny. So
Yeah, I caught the end of that, and I was like, oh, when you miss a twisted conversation, it was not great. But yeah.
Well, it stemmed from that SEM rush, and there you go. I said SEM. So whether you say SEM rush or SEM rush, right? And so I was kind of being a little snarky, and I said something along the lines of PPC is pronounced, yeah, it's like pops or something. Trying to be a little goofy, like no, you say PPC, so you should say SEM, and the joke failed.
It generated some conversation, so you could argue it succeeded in some sense.
Yeah, there you go. Maybe it did not fail. True dad
Right,
joke.
let's dig into a little bit more about you then, Kirk. So from the very beginning, like, when was this moment for you? When did you think, do you know what? I'm going to become a marketer. When was that moment? What happened? Tell me a little bit more about it.
It was something I stumbled in rather than planned on. So that for sure, without a doubt, happened. I actually went to school for theology. So I have a bachelor's and a master's in biblical theology, and so was actually along the career path more of becoming like a full-time pastor rather than a marketer. That was not in my career path in any way, shape, or form.
Wow.
And then when I was in seminary down in Louisville, Kentucky, I was working overnights, backstocking, it's called, at a Target. So, do they have Targets in the UK?
There is a similar one. You
Okay.
put me on the spot, but I can't
No,
think of
that's
what it
right.
is.
But like, yeah, I wasn't sure if they have Target Corporation or not, but yeah, it's basically it's a big box store, right? And so that's what I was doing is boxes and all night, and then I'd get home, maybe fall asleep for an hour or two, and then go to school. And got to the point where I was like, I will literally take any job if it allows me to sleep and see my wife. And so the next job that came along was marketing. I was like, okay, I guess I'm a marketer now. And then, believe it or not, just absolutely loved it, and that's kind of how it all got started. So kind of an accidental thing. So
Nice, nice. I think the UK equivalent is like Asda, but no, Asda would be Walmart for you. Anyway, we'll just move. We'll move on quickly. Imagine you've got a time machine. You can go back to when you very first started in the industry, but armed with all of the knowledge that you've got right now. What advice do you think that you'd give to yourself on day one?
that is a good question, as are all of them. And that's my attempt at stalling a little bit so I can have a good answer. I honestly don't have a great answer for this one, to be honest, because some of what a journey is you learn stuff as you go, and so sometimes what you learned, if you can take that back, then that might stump like other learnings that you picked up from that process and journey as well. um I think if maybe if anything, I think I would have gone back and maybe been more intentional about sales and just kind of thinking through business and business growth, and even learning that a little bit more. Um, I just had no idea what I was doing in any way, shape, or form with growing a business, and it was just fine. I'm super happy with where I'm at. But even just starting to read some books or things like that and thinking through some of the basics of business management and growth would have probably helped me a lot more.
Nice, very interesting. I'm going to bear that in mind when I listen back to this edit. Let's move on then. For me, it is not a list of top PPCers in the industry if your name isn't on there. So many will see you as an inspiration for them in the industry. But what about you, Kirk? Who inspires you? Who's a big inspiration for you in the industry?
I think I'm going to take the political way out, and but it's also the true way. Um, I don't know if a very specific individual comes to mind, but the group of people that is PPC Chat on Twitter is absolutely who have most inspired me and continue to inspire me. That's how I got my start really in PPC. Was just hanging out with people, Melissa Mackey, Susan Winograd, Brad Geddes, just all of these people, right? And we'd learn together. Mostly, I would learn and be inspired by all of them. Um, and then I've just made deep friendships from them along the way as well. And so, kind of as a group, PPC Chat is the reason I'm where I am today, to be honest.
Awesome. Yeah, couldn't agree more. I think I've been in the industry a lesser amount of time than yourself, but something like that chat group has been talked about for so many different years, and it's a massive resource. So, strongly urge that you check it out if you are listening to this. Let's talk a little bit about ZATO then. So, tell us a little bit more about ZATO, but most importantly, some of the current challenges that you've got with the business now and how you're planning to overcome them.
Yeah, definitely. So I think I mentioned this in the beginning. ZATO is pretty, we're pretty small. I would say, if there is a main challenge that we have, it is my own failings in terms of like business management and leadership. And I'm not just being falsely humble. We have a good team. We have in some ways, for how small we are, we even have a fairly decent brand. So we get leads from a variety of different clients, and we do a fairly good job overall with that. But I think that just my lack of knowledge of really how to run a great business and build in process and how that works into everything, sales and efficiency and all that stuff, which I'm kind of learning on the job. I'm not fooled at all that that's something where if probably a different person who really kind of understood that stuff, like if I had already built and grown a few agencies and then walked into ZATO and exactly everything, started like I did, I have no doubt that it'd be a different place just because of all the stuff that I would know better about management that I just don't know. So I've never even worked in a PPC agency before. Like I said, I stumbled into marketing, and from there I started my own little freelance consulting thing, and then I started hiring people and kind of turned it into an agency. So there's pros to that, and then there's cons as well, which I'm very willing to admit.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's very open and honest as well. I don't think I've had a guest who's been that open before about management style and how they would change that, which is definitely interesting to hear. So thanks a lot for sharing about that. Let's talk about COVID then. How has COVID affected the business, if any, and how did you respond to that?
Yeah, there's two stages for us of COVID. The first was the oh crap, we're screwed like everyone else, very in the very beginning.
Yeah,
Um, and that was, for me, that was solely based in the unknown and not in reality, which is really nice, and that weighs into the second stage, because when we first when everything first started hitting the fan, and probably everyone listening can attest to this, there was just so much unknown with everything that it impacted everything. It impacted the market. The market in the US here tanked. I think it was like March 15th, 16th, something like that. And so that impacted people's willingness to buy certain things. That impacted people going out and buying stock loads of toilet paper and things like that. So it just changed things in a lot of unknown ways. And then that was also early on enough in the virus where we're kind of all wondering, I mean, what is going to happen, right? I mean, is this going to kill like millions of people? Is it going to kill hundreds of thousands? Is it going to kill a billion? There was so much unknown that that itself worked into some of our clients, in terms of, we had, right in the beginning, we had clients who would delay payment to us. We had some clients who were very much in like COVID impacted industries, travel, right? Or specifically, sorry, not for us travel, but specifically for us events. We had clients in the events. We had clients in restaurant equipment type stuff. So very, very much impacted by that. So initially, to be honest, there was quite a bit of fear of what's going to happen. Then as things started settling down, we kind of realized, a few months after that, then we actually started to see growth then, because a number of, I think, different clients were tightening their belts, taking a second look at maybe their current agencies, or maybe they would get rid of an in-house person to try an agency, whatever it might be. And then we actually started getting some leads, and even saw a little bit of growth there because of that. So it was just it was a roller coaster ride for us a little bit, and we're in, honestly, a decent place that I'm happy about now. So
yeah. Well, that's good to hear, and hopefully that continues and the growth continues. I would strongly suspect it's down to your brilliant pricing model that you've mentioned in the book, but we will talk about that shortly. So about yourself then, again, as I've mentioned, constantly on these lists of top PPCs. You're constantly doing really great work, and many people say, "Look, this is the guy to listen to when he speaks." How do you get to that level? How do you learn and gain knowledge? How are you keeping on top of everything that's going on in the industry, which seems to change so much? How do you do that?
Yeah, it is tiring. Um, I was just talking to someone about this the other day. There's something that is kind of consciously discouraging about knowing something and learning it and investing, maybe a decade of knowledge into a specific thing in Google, and then having that change, right?
Mm.
Where then maybe for that specific entity, let's say, all of a sudden just as much as like the intern does, right? And that has almost this psychological impact on me sometimes, where sometimes it's just it's hard. It's a little discouraging at times to realize all of this knowledge that I've had, while sometimes it's more on those soft skills or marketing information. Strategically, there's a lot of knowledge, but sometimes tactically, when you're going to one of your teammates who's been working in PPC for like 2 years rather than whatever 10 or 11, and you're asking them, hey, how do I find this in the Google Ads UI, right? um it's kind of frustrating. So I fully admit sometimes to being a little bit discouraged of, oh man, I gotta almost like I gotta relearn that. I already spent time relearning that in my career, right? The flip side of that being, at some point you just gotta kind of accept that, and that's part of where we're at. And I think this year for me has been that, of really kind of wrestling with that and moving into that acceptance side of just, this is the way it is. Keep reading blog posts, keep learning, keep digging into things, keep challenging yourself. So, how I do that would be, like I noted, trying to stay up on different solid industry blogs. I actually wrote just recently a blog post that covers for just PPC beginners. If you're wanting to learn PPC, here's a lot of resources. And one of those sections is blogs that I follow. So like Tenuity is an awesome resource. Tenuity really has some phenomenal people there, with Elizabeth Marston, Andy Taylor. Andy Taylor used to do a lot of the number crunching stuff and sharing at Merkle. Now he's at Tenuity. So there's like a really having a glimpse into what some industry stuff is doing. They just released Black Friday, Cyber Monday numbers for their clients, right? So Tenuity is one of them that I follow. I like keeping an eye on Clicks marketing blog posts, Search Engine Land and Search Engine Journal, of course, PPC Hero. So I think a lot of those are a good place to start. And then definitely trying to keep up with various books in that. There hasn't been as many PPC books for sure over the last couple of years as there used to be, but all of a sudden we are looking at a few different ones. Let's see, Frederick Vallet's book on machine automation, machine learning automation. I think it's called something like Future Proofing Your Digital Marketing Agency. Is a great read that he just released, I think, last year. I'm currently reading a book by Patrick Gilbert called Join or Die, and I would recommend that book to anyone in digital marketing. It is an absolutely phenomenal read. So yeah, just trying to stay up on all that stuff.
Awesome. Yeah, definitely share some links. I've read Fred's book and I agree, it's absolutely brilliant. And I think even going back and reading it now this year, a lot of things that may not have been as relevant or stand out immediately would come straight back and think, well, actually, yeah, this is making a lot of sense now,
Mm-hmm.
which is quite interesting. Before we talk about the book, then, let's talk a little bit about failure, then, Kirk. Something I ask every guest. What do you think in the last 12 months has been the biggest failure for you? Why do you think that it happened?
Yeah, I don't mind talking about failure because I don't know. I look around and we all have pros and cons, right? I even referenced that in my book a little bit. So believe it or not, I don't mind sharing some of this stuff. I look at the last 12 months, and some of that is, I covered this in the appendix of my book, but our personal lives and our business lives, often it's hard to separate those, especially as we think about things like mental health and that, which I think is very important. And so I look at the past year of my personal life and kind of how that impacted our stuff professionally. I won't go into all the details, but we had a number of things change pretty significantly in our personal life at the beginning of 2020 that even went beyond COVID. We had major home foundation issues that really impacted. We basically got forced out of our home, and kind of had to do a lot of financial changes in that impacted a lot of that stress of that, plus some illness stuff for my wife. We actually lost an unborn baby at the time, things like that. So that all happened. We moved out of our old house the day before the first Montana COVID lockdowns. so so we walked into we actually had to move into my in-laws basement because that's literally all we could do uh, during all that. And so basically, in some ways, like 2020 for my personal life was kind of this little bit of a shambles thing. And I think that what I would say looking at 2020 is I really struggled just kind of not letting my feelings and emotions drive a lot of my decision making. And so thankfully, I think I did overall okay with client communication and things like that. But there was a point in the past few months here where I've had to kind of really kind of try to coach myself a little bit and saying all of this is what it is. At some point, like, you can't keep avoiding meetings because you're just drained emotionally and all that stuff. You can't go on a vacation right now because literally none of us can. Like there's all that sort of stuff where there's some level of at some point, it just might be time to say, yep, it's hard right now. Let's get back in the game. And I wish that I had done that a little bit earlier because I think overall we did okay. I think overall that didn't really I don't think it negatively impacted any of our clients, to be honest. A lot of that's my team. They're awesome. But a lot of it was my own kind of personal interior stuff going on. And I think I should have controlled that a little bit quicker in the year. So super long-winded answer maybe, but there it is.
No, very open and very honest. And as I mentioned when I shared this on Twitter, I really enjoyed reading the appendix of the book. Like I said, very open and honest. Thank you very much for sharing it. And of course, can't carry on without saying I'm very sorry to hear about your loss. But I think without giving too much away from the book, the very last point you make in the appendix is going to resonate with so many people, and they're going to be like, you know what, this really makes sense. Before we speak about the book, I'm going to ask you a question that I haven't prepared you for. And I know you kind of touch on it in the book, but I really want to see what your answer is. If you had to give up one area in Google Ads or one part of it to get full search term visibility back, what would it be and why?
So basically, if I could swap out something, like if we had to lose something, but we gained search terms back, what would it be?
Yeah.
This is going to be a funny answer, and it might be one that I change my mind on in the future. All right, but here it is. I'll throw it out there. I just don't really care about quality score much in any way, shape, or form. It's an indicator light, which is cool and okay, but also like it is what it is. So in the hands of a good marketer, a Google Ads campaign, an account, it is what it is. Truly. So I do think there are helpful things sometimes of keeping an eye on quality score and maybe trying to update a landing page or things like that. But I would constantly point us back with quality score. Most of the time, all of those things are stuff that we should be doing anyways. Like, regardless of what quality score is, we should make sure that our landing pages match up with our keywords, things like that, right? So in some ways, I think Google could remove quality score, and hopefully they're not listening here, because let's just stop removing things. All right. Like let's agree to never remove anything else from Google. But there's my answer. Quality score is something that for some people, it's this huge deal, and it's just not really been a big deal for me. So
yes, love that. I think when I first started in the industry, I saw that somebody had shared like a script where you can monitor this stuff daily, and I was like, yes, I'm going to do this. But then I just wasted too long looking at how the numbers fluctuated rather than actually doing the work. So fully on board with you there. Let's move on. Let's talk about the book. For anybody who doesn't know about the book, do you want to share a little bit more about it? Do you want to tell us more about the book and what it is?
Sure. Yeah. So Ponderings of a PPC Professional is the title of the book. And then there's a subtitle that honestly is so long, I never remember it either. Something about philosophy and observations. Yeah, that's what it is. It it is the reader getting kind of almost insight into me, like having a conversation with myself and thinking through stuff about digital marketing. I don't know. I think that's how I describe the book. It's not a book that's going to tell you here's the specific tactical way that you should implement, that you should monitor quality score. How about that? It's not a book that's going to say how does the machine learning algorithm work. Well, let's see, let's tear that apart and look into that. And which, by the way, go read Fred or Patrick's books that I shared earlier for that sort of thing, right? They're very helpful and somewhat technical in that. At least Patrick says. Fred, I know, is also kind of looking at the philosophy of machine learning in that. But this is almost more. They are kind of random. It's a random assortment of thoughts of things that over the years I've pondered, had deep and long and multiple conversations with about things like attribution. What are things that we need to think through as we think about attribution? So maybe the way to describe it would be, it's not a book that's going to tell you here's the attribution model that you should use. It's a book that's going to say what are ways that we need to be suspicious of how attribution is used and what it's trying to tell us, right? What are some weaknesses maybe in it that at least we should be aware of as we're thinking about it? So in that way, it's like really my ultimate goal, as I state even in like the introduction, that my ultimate goal truly is not to necessarily convince you of a specific point, although at times I try to do that. Really, my ultimate goal is I want someone to read that book and walk away just having thought through some of this stuff more than they did before, and maybe being a little bit further in thinking through, okay, now that I know that about attribution, okay, now what does that mean? Like how do I now treat my clients in that, thinking through that stuff now that I've thought through attribution more. So yeah, how's that for a book intro?
Yeah, very good, very good. I've had an Amazon author on the podcast before, and you're pushing them close. I'm going to tell you that. So, tell me then, Kirk, about the process from start to finish. How long did that take from when you first had the idea to when you first got a copy of the physical book in your hand?
Yeah, so a lot of the chapters, most of them are essays that I've written in the past. So in some ways, it was more of a man. I bet if I kind of think through this, really edit them, overhaul them, update them, compile them, and do all that, I think there's a good book there. So that's really what started it. So in some ways, it's not that decided I'm going to write a book and sat down and just wrote it from front to cover, right? Um, from the point of first kind of really thinking, I think I'd like to do this. So in that sense, this took years and years. In the other sense, I don't know. When I kind of get into my mind to do something, I really want to just do it and get it done. So I don't think it was very long. Maybe 2 or 3 months. I just really tried to push it out, but it was a lot of work, a lot of late nights.
Yeah, I can imagine. You've segued very nicely into my next question then. And it's about writer's block. So do you believe in writer's block?
Um, I do. I mean, definitely it hits. It's probably I think maybe it hits some people more than others. Um, I mean, there are times where I'll experience a little bit of it, but for the most part, I don't really have that issue. I do try to just keep my thoughts moving enough and written down in notes and things like that. So when it's time for me to write, I can usually just kind of sit down and roll. But every once in a while, I do experience it, and I know some people, probably people who write a lot more commonly. I would have to think if for an author who's just kind of always writing books, I could definitely see that becoming a struggle.
Yeah. Interesting point you made about your thoughts there, because I wanted to ask you, if anything, what did you leave out of the book? What didn't you include?
I don't know if I have anything that after the fact I thought, oh, I'd really like to include that. In fact, there was one thing that so the book is done and almost totally, no, it was fully edited. I forgot because I used actually I used a family member who is a, a grammatical genius in that, used to work for the city and all that. So I actually used her to edit it. Um, so it was fully finished and edited, and I thought, it would be amazing because I've never really seen a really solid, detailed essay or chapter or anything on like just different PPC pricing models. And it's just something that I'm personally interested in. And I have lots of thoughts on pros and cons. And I just kind of wanted to think through all that stuff. And so I almost didn't include it in there because it wasn't fully written and the book was basically done. And then I thought, you know, that would be a regret. Like I'd always be like, oh, the book would have even been, in my opinion, been even better with that. So I did the work and got it in, and we re-edited. I wrote it, we edited it again, and finalized it. So right now, I don't think I have anything I wish would have been in there, but I'm sure that'll change in like 6 months.
Well, I'll ask you about that shortly, but often when you say things like that, and having had the pleasure of meeting you, and as you mentioned about your family, I always say to you, like, look, when do you sleep? So that answer really doesn't surprise me. Tell me about writing the book then and how you felt. How did writing the book, what did that process feel like? And how did it feel when you knew that you'd finished and you'd finally finished that process?
Yeah. So I I basically disliked the book by the time I was done because I knew I don't know if this ever happened to you before. So I also like music, and so I like play. I actually play in my church every week and that sort of thing with a band, and sometimes, you know, if we have a song that we're struggling with and we practice it so much, it almost gets to the point where like you're playing it and you might even be playing it flawlessly and you're just kind of like, I don't like this song anymore because you know it so well, right? That's kind of the way I felt with by the time I was done in the book, because I also and I'm waiting for this to have I'm waiting for Amazon to finish my review, but I also have an Audible version coming that I actually read myself. Um, and so, but it needs to be reviewed, and it's been in review for like a month. But so by the time I had finished, I wrote it all, which, you know, that's fun and all that. And you're really excited. I always get super excited when I'm writing something, a chapter or an essay or something. It's like, I just have to get this, on paper and blast through it. But then after it, I spent so much time editing and going through all the work and rewriting and editing, and then reading it all, you know, like reading it and then like rereading parts, and that by the time I was done, I was kind of like, oh, I'm kind of done with this book for a little bit. So it's kind of funny. I knew it too well, I guess.
Yeah, I bet. Well, I suspect that I know the answer to the next question, but I will ask it anyway. Do you have any plans for any further work like this?
No specific plans, but yeah, I'd love to. I mean, writing a book was always a bucket list item, and I just really enjoy writing. So there's kind of this level of like, yeah, man, I'd love to do that. Like it was like a day after I finished, and I was like, oh my goodness, that was. I'm so glad that I sent it off. You got it off in the Kindle Direct Publishing, all that. Like I'm done. And it was like a week later, I kid you not, that I mentioned to my wife, I was like, I kind of want to write another book. And she was kind of like, oh, geez, you know. um, so nothing specific planned, but I would love to again.
I'm sure she'll be pleased to hear that.
We won't tell her.
Yeah, unless she listens to this. And if you are listening, hello. Last thing then, if anyone, for any reason, is unsure about whether they should buy the book or not, what would you say to convince them?
Well, in my opinion, book pricing is an interesting and intriguing thing to me, because I look at book pricing, and if you really think of it, so, you know, so someone who's on the fence, it's kind of funny because a person could look at a Kindle book like mine. So in the US, mine costs $9.99, so $10 Kindle. I think it's $17 paperback. And so whatever the equivalent in you know, British pounds is, right? And I look at that, and it's funny because, and I do the same thing. I look at that and I'm like, you know, 10 bucks on a digital book, let's say. I will drop $10 on a cheeseburger, on a good cheeseburger and french fries, right? Without a doubt, for just a quick little lunch, right? But then
Yeah.
there's something about a book where I'm like, I don't know. You know, I don't know if I should spend the same amount on this cheeseburger that will actually not be healthy. And so I look at that. So in some ways, that's why I started with that comment about book pricing, because in some ways, if you think about it, book pricing is kind of funny, and the market is kind of funny because you definitely have bad books out there, but for a book, it's kind of like if you wade through it, if you get through it and you pick up one thing, just one thing, that's it. Doesn't even have to be other things, but you pick up one thing that either helps your business like sell better or helps your clients a little bit better, and you keep that client longer, or that makes you a more well-rounded person, and so you're more valuable to your boss. Someday you get a raise, all that stuff. Literally just one thing, then you like paid only $10 to significantly improve your life, and that to me, that's the power of a book, right? And so if someone is just like, I don't know if I'm ready to spend I don't know if I'm ready to spend a cheeseburger price on this book. That's probably one thing that I'd say on that book and almost any other book as well. Like you might gain that one thing that really intrigues you and helps you in life for honestly an exceptionally low price. So jump in, get it, and learn something.
Love that. That's a brilliant answer. I've not heard that analogy before. It's a great way to put it. Sadly, we are coming to the end, but I do have a couple more questions for you. The first one is, the funnel is dead. Change my mind. No, I'm absolutely joking.
Yeah, for those not aware, that's a chapter in the book.
So listen, if we sort of swap roles right now, and you got to be the interviewer talking to Kirk, what question would you ask yourself that I haven't?
I do not have an answer for that because, to be honest, like I feel like the questions you asked were really, really well done. Yeah, I don't think I have a good answer for that.
Awesome. I will
Sorry.
take that. That works
Take
for
that as
me.
a
Thank you very
compliment.
much. Yeah. Thank you very much. And you did touch on it earlier on about music. So if you do listen to music when you need to get deep in that zone for like data analysis, hardcore quality score monitoring, what is in your ears? What do you listen to, if anything?
Yes, absolutely have a top data crunching in the zone artist, and that is the War on Drugs. So
Nice.
someone introduced me to them, and it's just this like I don't know even how to describe it. It's kind of almost this own genre, but there's almost a Bob Dylan feel to it. Um, it's easy listening, but it kind of drives along as well. I love it. Love the guitar parts, and it's the best.
Awesome. Sadly, this is the end of the podcast. I think we could be talking for hours, but for me, it's like almost bedtime at like in the evening, and your day is probably just beginning. Thank you very much, Kirk, for being an absolutely brilliant guest. As expected, have not let me down, of course. If people wanted to find out more about you, how can they do that? How can they get in touch with you? Where can they follow you? Share the details.
Yeah, well, and thank you for being a brilliant interviewer. So serious about that. I loved it. Love the questions. Love
Thank you.
chatting. So yeah, you can hit up my website if you want to know more about our business and Google Ads management. So zatomarketing.com. You can learn more information about my PPC book by visiting ppcmarketingbook.com, or it's on Amazon, and you can always just search for Ponderings of a PPCer or even just PPC marketing. The book should pop up pretty close to the top. So yeah, go check it out.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Kirk. And as I do with all of my guests, open forum within reasons. The last word on this podcast is all yours. So feel free to take it away.
Thank you, thank you. I don't think I have too much to add other than what we said. But I would just note, as I said, and kind of what my book is trying to do, which is to get you to think, is keep at it, keep learning, keep learning new things. Don't give up on that, and always be willing to think about different viewpoints. Try to find both sides of a viewpoint, and that's going to help us. That's going to help us all learn and grow together in our industry.
So that was another great episode in the bag. I'm really enjoying hearing from some brilliant people in this industry. If you enjoyed this podcast, please follow me on Spotify. Please leave a rating on Apple Podcasts or whichever platform you are using. Tell a friend to tell a friend, and hopefully see you for the next episode.